Who do we have?
Brandon Mayhew.
Brandon Mayhew. All right. Brandon Mayhew. Ah, here we go. Public masturbation.
What?
I don't get it. What's the kick? Why don't you do it at home like the rest of us with a big flat screen TV, 50 channels of pay-per-view, in a Starbucks? That's nice.
That ain't me, man. I was the guy who was selling meth, allegedly.
Okay, all right, I got you. Meth, right. I'm sorry, that was a little transpositional error. Nothing little whiteout can't take care of. Yeah, and felony quantity.
Just barely.
Yeah, just barely. The cops around here are like butchers, always got their thumbs on the scales, you know. But good luck arguing that in court.
Right. So I show you that clip because I love Better Call Saul. I think it's hysterical. But also because this is often sort of how we engage with clients, obviously not to this extreme, but right, we're going in, we're really, particularly on first appearance, we've got a stack of people that we have to talk to, right? He's confusing it, he's looking in the file, he's not looking at his client, he's just sort of confronting him with the charges, he's got the charges confused, and this guy is like, what is going on? Right? So we have to think about how we engage and think about the conversation that we want to have with clients and who we want to be when we walk in the room to save ourselves time, to gain client trust quickly, and to think about gathering the information in the best way possible that we're going to present to the judge. So I'm going to suggest to you that we talk, and we're going to talk a little bit about sort of empathy. And now I know you're like, oh no, okay, here's the part where we're going to talk about like hugging our clients and singing Kumbaya and all that stuff, which is fine. But you don't have that kind of time at first appearance. So what I want to sort of put out there for you is this new, kind of a new way to think about being empathetic to clients, and that's looking at the last part of this definition. The ability to step in the shoes of another person, aiming to understand their feelings and perspectives, but to use that understanding to guide our actions, right? To think about being open and empathetic and being listening to our clients, number one, because it's nice and we're human beings, but yeah, because we need to get something that we can use. And what I keep saying to lawyers, and what we found to be very effective in New Jersey, is the less you talk in these initial client meetings and the more you let your clients talk to you, the better you will be. But it is counterintuitive to us as lawyers, as people in a hurry, as human beings, as type A personalities, of everything that you want to put on what as lawyers we are, it makes it very difficult because we always want to fill the space with information for our client. So how do you do that? In the last sort of year or so, I've been thinking a lot about client communications and client relationships and how to develop them. And when I first started embarking on this process to figure out ways that we could form better communication with our clients, I went to legal sources, like the American Bar Association and the state and local bar associations. And they all said these things like, I don't know, like be client aware. Like, I don't know what that means. Aware I have clients? I'm aware, I see them, there's a lot of them, right? Try to figure out which role to play and when. Like all these kind of strange things that didn't get at it. And then I started looking at psychological journals and looking outside the legal profession for ways that we can build relationships with other people, and came across in Psychology Today an article that talked about these things. Knowing yourself and your intentions, setting expectations, listening without judgment, showing care and concern, and knowing and realizing that your partner is a separate person. And of course, this is relationship advice for you and your significant other. But it also works really well for clients. And it's this advice that we need to employ when we're doing those initial client meetings. So how do we do that? And why, more importantly? The National Association for Criminal Defense Lawyers published a story, it was a while ago now, but about talking to clients about their initial interactions with attorneys and what worked for them and what didn't. And in 65% of them had negative interactions with their attorney. And 25% of the people who had negative interactions said it was because I didn't have a chance to tell my story. Of the 35% that had a positive interaction, 75% of those said the interaction was positive because I got to tell my story. Now, the article and the study that it was about did not actually define what tell my story meant, but I read that, and this could be a total guess, but it works for today, so I'm going to hazard it, is that that means an opportunity to talk about whatever I want to talk about, right? Tell my story. I don't necessarily think that always means tell you about the facts of my case. So one thing that we should all be aware of, and I'm working on it, is knowing who we are when we go into the room. So knowing who we are as a lawyer and as a communicator before we go into the room to talk to a client so that we can be in a place where we're hearing their story in the way that they want to tell it. And when I say knowing yourself, I mean like really knowing yourself and not just pretending who you are on your best day. I mean knowing yourself as a person and a communicator on an average day. Now, there's different ways that you can find out. There's a personality test that you can take that the next couple slides are based on. I can actually give it to Diane and Bonnie, and they could send it to you guys, or to give it to Alex, which is fun. Another way is to ask the people around you. Ever ask your significant other, how am I as a communicator? If you haven't, prepare yourself for a long conversation, possibly divorce or separation, right? But it can be really illuminating to ask the people around you. When I started kind of thinking about these things, I did it with my significant other. I asked clients, a spectrum of clients, how am I as a communicator? And I got some really honest feedback that I've been working on. And generally, and with this personality test that you can take, again, if you don't want to be divorced or die alone, you can take the personality test. And it gives you sort of 4 different types of communication styles. And I'm not going to go through these at length, but the 4 ways sort of people communicate with one another are, there you have action-oriented people. So for example, if we take it in the context of criminal defense, let's say we think that our client should take 5 years in state prison. That's what we think that's a good deal in this case. An action-oriented lawyer would say, you should take the 5 because you're on videotape, your DNA is at the scene, and your mom is going to testify against you. Right? That's what an action-oriented lawyer would say. A process-oriented lawyer would say, your mom's going to testify against you. You're on video, your DNA is at the scene, therefore, I think that you should take the 5. A people-oriented lawyer would say, I talked to your sister, I talked to your wife, I talked to your mom who really doesn't want to testify against you. And we all think you should take the 5. And then an idea-oriented person, and I have the hardest trouble with this, again, I'm working on it, I have the hardest trouble with this, are those people who need to go like all the way around the block to get to the house next door. You know them, the idea people. We filed a motion to change venue. We filed a motion to try this case in Arkansas. We filed a motion to do this, to do that, and we have no other option. So now we're back at, I think you should take the 5, right? It's a sort of wild, creative, free-flowing process. And there are lawyers of all types, and there are clients of all types, but you need to know who you are. And I'm an action-oriented person, that is my personality. And after doing this, I realized that, you know how we sometimes say, and it's a terrible thing, and I hate it when we say it, but I like that client, right? I don't like to hear people say that, but sometimes we intuitively feel like we connect with some clients better than others. The clients that I like were all action-oriented clients when I thought about it. And the clients that I was like, I can't stand this, I can't go to the jail today, were the idea-oriented clients because they drove me crazy, right? So knowing who you are going into the room and how you communicate can help you figure out how to maximize an interaction with someone when you have a short period of time. But before you can so then the next thing you need to do is sort of like look at your client, and you can do this fairly quickly, and start to see how do they like to receive information, what's working for them, does it work when you say it in an action-oriented way, and I always try that first because that's my approach. And then I see that they're not sort of grooving to that and try to kind of make a guess about the way that I need to communicate with my client. But before you can do that, you also have to sift through a lot of barriers to communication that have nothing to do with communication style. And some of them are on the board. And I will admit to you, when I first made this list, I was like, I'm going to put all the attorney barriers to communication on one side, and I'm going to put the client barriers to communication on the other side. And then I was like, I am such an asshole. Because all of these barriers could be either one of ours, right? And very briefly, I want to touch on the last one, which is privilege. I'm not going to have a discussion about privilege, and I don't mean just privilege based on race. I mean privilege that's based on anything we attach to that word. My point here is, particularly when you're talking about things like the means to post bail, the ability to find housing and resources, that when you walk into a room, you cannot assume that the person in front of you has or doesn't have resources, can or can't make a certain amount of bail. So the short lesson on privilege, or the short sort of statement on privilege, is this. Things like I can relate, I understand, I know what you're going through, particularly the first time you meet a client, can do you more harm than good. Nobody knows your walk in life. Every single person in this room has taken a different walk to get to this place. The same thing with our clients. So going in with assumptions about who our clients are, or what they need, or what they can and can't do resource-wise, is going to set you back. It's going to prevent you from being open to the communication. It's going to shut them down if you make assumptions about them, and it's going to allow them to make assumptions about you. So kind of strike those words from your vocabulary. So how do you do it then? How do you decide? How do you look at a client and sort of assess what they need in that moment and start talking about how to communicate with them and how to get what you need to do these bail arguments? You can sit with somebody and just kind of look at them. Not in a creepy way, right? But take a moment to let them talk to you and get a sense of who they are.
Nice mustache. Six, five. Sechs, fünf.
Are you new in Berlin?
Yeah, 8 months.
And are you alone here or with your family?
No, I don't. This life sometime nice, sometime not good.
I'm keeping my eyes on you. Hello. I expect you to ask my number. Be a strong man.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
We will go to the zoo, maybe next few days. I will text you if you would like to.
I would love it. Of course. You can do it.
When I was looking into her eyes, I was trying to see what I could tell from the life that she lived, and I think I could tell that there was a lot of experience lived there.
It doesn't matter, look at the eyes or something, just give yourself a chance to talk and to look at the other person.
So I'm not suggesting that you sit down with your clients and say, we're going to stare at each other for 4 minutes. Again, that's creepy. But what I am suggesting is that you can build a powerful bond in a very short amount of time. And the research, there's a lot of research behind that I'm not going to get into today because we are going to talk about getting information that you need for first appearance. But there's research that suggests that 4 minutes is about the mark, and it's